It just occurred to me that this is not viable. It can't continue like this because it's not doable. I stood from the bed and it's as if something didn't stand up with me. Something was left on the bed. And I felt so light. It's like the lightest that I've ever been. Now, what was left on the bed is the quote unquote, is the carcass of that ego construct. The ego, as we know, is that which presents itself as the main character, right? That's why we have this phrase, main character syndrome. But in reality, the ego self is the imposter, right? Is the false self. Is that which claims to be the authority. It's that which claims to be the owner, the possessor. Like this is my life. This is mine. I'm the one who's going to go achieve that. I'm the one who's going to go figure that out. I'm the one who's going to go do that. Right? It's the hijacker, the colonizer. But that's the thing, it's the imposter, right? So in reality, it's not the case. In reality, it's quite the opposite, meaning it's not the ego, who's the quote unquote the main character. It's actually the side, you can say the accessory, the the background or the audience. And the quote unquote the main character is the whole system, the avatar, the body, basically. Now, when we are the audience, right, or when we are the spectator, we are in a place of listening. We're in a place of curiosity. We're curious what will happen, or we are in tuning into, like when we are watching a movie, we are in that space of being tuned into. We are curious, we're in a place of curiosity. We're lost, we're lost in the movie. At that time period, when the movie is really engaging and we are really engrossed in it, we're not thinking of the I, my, me self, the ego self, right? It's as if the I, my, me self has taken a backseat. It's lost, it's dissolved in this place of listening or curiosity. So that's how it is when we are in understanding that the ego self is not the main character. There's no, you can say, benefit in it being the main character. The imposter being the main character or buying into that quote unquote lie is not of benefit. In fact, we will be in a place of notness, right? Not whole, not complete, not enough, not valid, not worthy. Hence, therefore, I have to go get it. I have to go chase that. I have to go possess that. We're in that sense or place of some kind of incompleteness, some kind of not enoughness, some kind of anxiety or mistake, like something is not right. And so placing this imposter as the main character, let's say, as the authority, we actually get the signal that it's a misassignment, that we're not supposed to assign it in that position, because what we get is suffering, right? It's like the suffering is the signal that this is a mispositioning, misassignment or misalignment, right? The ego self, that is not its real place, you can say. Now there's a saying, you get what you tolerate. So it's pretty straightforward. What we put up with, that's what we get. Right? So when we place the ego as the authority, when we treat it as our full soul identity, we suffer because again, it is a place of notness, right? We are in entertaining of it. We are in putting up with it. So that's what we get. We are suffering in that arrangement, you can say, wherein the ego self is the authority, but we are still entertaining it, right? We are still putting up with it. Even though we're suffering all the notness ideas and brainwashing, and we still keep charging it or feeding it, well, then that's what we get. It's kind of like being with a toxic relationship or, dealing with a narcissist, right? If we keep feeding it, if we keep entertaining it, if we keep tolerating, that's what we get. The ego position is the same shtick over and over again. Basically, notness. Right? It's not enough. You have to go do something. And it's always coming from that place of fragmentedness, like not enoughness. It's the doer, it's the separate, quote unquote, manual ego doer. The engine, you can say, is this fragmented, separated thing that effortfully or strivefully does things in order to get there, right? That's always the equation. That's always the driving force. It's kind of like a quote unquote a dirty fuel, or let's say a primitive engine. It's like primitive times. It's not modern. That's the that's the sense that I'm getting. It's like an old and primitive time, and it's sort of even like outdated. You know how outdated things or machines, when we see them or when we take a look at them, it's like they're no longer viable anymore. They're already obsolete. They're not usable. They're not, it's like they're not practical. It's not applicable. It's not practical. It's like they belong to the primitive past. It requires so much effort, or very inefficient, or very tedious, or it doesn't apply here anymore in this time. I got a significant sense of this after the Dark Knight. Or actually, it's how I, quote unquote, got out of the Dark Knight. For those who are unfamiliar, the Dark Knight is characterized by the old ego self's motivation falling away. It's a time where disorientation and a sense of dark, gloomy purposelessness and meaninglessness is experienced. It's like being in a bleak, grayscale world and having absolutely no will to do what you used to do. All drive, all motivation and flame snuffed out from the system, and just being a hopeless, quote unquote, dying blob in a limbo, you can say. So after the initial awakening, for me, in my experience, the next day was immediately the Dark Knight. I mentioned this in one of my books, wherein I was lying down, and it has already been like around 2+ months at that point. And it just occurred to me that this is not viable. I still have, several years to live. It can't continue like this because it's not doable. Just not, it's just not practical. Like being this way for the rest of my life is just not it's just not viable. And at that time, I was kind of already getting in touch with that, you could say, other engine, other force, so to speak. And so I just went with that. And that's when the dark night ended. I stood from the bed, and it's as if something didn't stand up with me. Something was left on the bed. And I felt so light. It's like the lightest that I've ever been. Now, what was left on the bed is the quote unquote, is the carcass of that ego construct at that time. And it's very interesting because it literally has a physical weight to it. Literally, like when I stood up, it's like a weight was taken off me. It's like it's like a dead carcass that I was still holding on. And so as long as I was still holding on to that already inviolable self, you can say, engine, then the dark night continues. It continues until you finally let go of it and go with that which is, again, quote unquote, viable, you know? Now, after this, of course, the ego construct resurrects itself, right? Revives itself, or it comes up. But after that experience, you have a real understanding that it's a ghostly thing. It's not the real you. It's not the real self. Again, it's like a ghost, forming itself, reconstructing itself. And it's easily seen through. It's become transparent now. It's not as solid and as heavy as before. And so that's the thing. As long as we're holding on to something, or as long as we keep, quote unquote, using it or sticking with it, then that's what we get, right? If we still put up with the, quote unquote, with the engine of the false self, of the ego self, then again, that's what we'll get, right? We're feeding it, we're entertaining it, you know? That's why you can say great horrible situations or tragedies or situations that's devastating, you can say, it's a great doorway for awakening for a lot of people, right? Because it's basically blowing up the ego self, rendering it, quote unquote, mortally wounded, that there's no choice but to shift into this other, quote unquote, body or other engine. Like imagine being a spirit, let's say, and we are inhabiting a body, and the body died, or it's mortally wounded or severely injured, that it's basically over. And so it can no longer work, right? So as a spirit, we have no choice but to shift into a different body. So that's just a metaphor. Let's say we are free to do that, right? We are free to occupy any vessel, any kind of quote unquote body. When the current body no longer works, mortally wounded, then we are forced, or we have no choice but to shift engine, so to speak. And so that's why I think a number of people experience a certain kind of awakening when, when there's a great, great tragedy or great horrible situation that just blew up the construct, the ego construct, that they have no choice but to shift body, you can say, but to shift their residence, their their engine. Another metaphor that I thought of is a balloon. And let's say the balloon has a small hole in it. And so if we pump air to the balloon, it's still gonna inflate, right? However, when there is already multiple holes, or there are already huge tears, then it requires so much effort, so much hard work, so much strivefulness just to get it to be inflated. And in fact, the minute you stop, it just it dies. The balloon is basically dead. It's no longer viable. It takes so much energy. It takes so much quote unquote suffering just to be there, you know? And so you're done with it, right? It's just, it's like no longer able to put up with it. It's just too much suffering. It's just too much suffering. It's not benefiting anymore. It doesn't serve anymore. It's a quote unquote, it's a liability. It's just not applicable, you know? It's kind of like at this time, an example, a typewriter. Let's say you're running a company. It's not anymore viable to have typewriters do the work. It's not applicable at this time. You need actual computers, right? You need working components or equipments. Typewriters are not gonna get you anywhere. Whereas before, there's no computers yet, right? So all you have is a typewriter. Then that's how it is, you know. It's you can say concurrent with the times. But when modernization progresses, then the typewriter becomes obsolete. If you notice, that's how it is with the human experience. As we age, as the quote unquote life of this avatar progresses, let's say the ego self that we're so used to before is like it's no longer a viable quote unquote equipment. It's not anymore a match. It's not anymore concurrent with the time. It's not anymore applicable or viable. It's like a doneness, you know, you're done with that. Of course, it's different for different people. Some people just keep holding on to that old ego construct and remain that way until death, right? You see people who remain, you know, immature and toddler like until until they die. But yeah, for people who have had an awakening experience, that's the trajectory, you can say. The ego construct is seen through. If it's seen through, it's now not anymore that solid. It's kind of like it starts to break down, or it's now fragile, you can say, that it's no longer workable. It's kind of like a car that breaks down every 5 minutes, and still using it and still working with it only causes suffering. And again, of course, as long as you put up with it and tolerate it, it's just gonna waste your time. It's just gonna siphon your attention and energy for nothing, you know? So that's how it is. You can say it's being practical, being logical. I can say that logic is really on par with awakeness. The more awake you are, the more logical you are, in my observation. It's like you're more practical. As we progress along the awakeness journey, more and more we realize that devotion to the whole is where it's at. It's actually the one that serves. Again, instead of feeding the separated ego self, instead of making the fragment quote unquote do all the work, the we quote unquote is a better engine than the I. And so we invest in the we, you know, we invest in the whole. We use the whole instead of the separated fragment. And so you can even say that it's a quote unquote, it's a lifestyle change, a lifestyle shift. The devotion, you can say, or the driving force or the running engine is shifted, a transferring of work. Like imagine transferring position or tasks or work responsibilities from one single person to a whole team, right? From the fragment to the whole. And as I've mentioned in my previous videos, the whole is where goodness lies, right? Goodness lies in the village. Resources lie in the village. So again, when we take a look at the ancient times, when you separated from the village, from the tribe, you're dead, right? The village is where it's at. The tribe is the life force. And so if we apply that here, then we can notice that all the notness ideas that the fragment is so preoccupied about is not the case in the whole. That air quality, that quote unquote, that atmosphere belongs or is contained or is quote unquote quarantined in the fragment, in the myopic ego self, in that separated self. So all the, you can say, psychological problems are basically the notness. Again, not whole, not complete, not enough, not deserving, not belonging, not supported, not valid, not official, right? Not legitimized. Again, all the notness. It can be very subtle, right? But all that is contained in the fragment. It's all there. It's like a package of notness. And so if we entertain it, if we give energy to it, if we still put up with it or bear with it or tolerate it, then that's what we get, right? So it's about actually deciding not to give it any more entertaining, not to put up with it anymore, not to put up with that kind of suffering anymore, knowing that it's a choice, that it's just an offering, that is not an end-all be-all truth, right? When we are tightly or myopically identified with the ego self and all its notness ideas, it's as if it's our whole world, right? It's as if it's the only option. It's as if it's the only truth. And we're trying to get out of it, and we're trying to fight it, and we're trying to fix it or resolve it and all that. But in reality, essentially, what really, quote unquote, gets us out of it is to cease entertaining it. Cease entertaining this engine, this imposter. Not see it as the main character, but as just a side thing, an accessorial thing. It actually doesn't warrant that kind of attention or authority. It's not meant to be the authority. And so when you tune into the avatar, you find that you can say that your ideal self is actually already being itself. It's already happening. You know how the ego self wants to improve, goes into this self-improvement journey and wants to better itself and wants to, chase or arrive at the ideal, right? But the thing is, the avatar is already being that. It's already available. It's not perfect. Perfection doesn't exist in the human experience. But it's what the ego self is, quote unquote, trying to get at all this time, you can say. It's actually already happening. It's actually already being. It's already doing it, basically. It's already being it. It's already that. It's just that the ego self is the preoccupation with the not that. And of course, if we follow it, if we give the tuning in or the devotion to it, well, then it will take us into this cyclic ride or journey of notness. Notness, therefore, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, I have to go do it, get there, possess this, achieve this, etc. And there'll always be that sense of incompleteness or wrongness or invalidity, right? That's why it's called the hungry ghost. It's a bottomless hole. It's an eternal black hole. That's basically it. It's a feature thing. That is its feature, you could say. And so, if you really prefer wholeness and true nature qualities, right? The quote unquote preferred beingness, then you stick with it. You'll no longer entertain the salesmen, the scammer imposter, right? That's offering you notness ideas. That's offering you the old engine, the obsolete engine. So if you're serious, right? If you're serious about something, if you're serious about your preference, so to speak, then you'll not put up with the non-preference, you can say. Or let's say, if you're serious about reality, then you'll not put up with unreality, with illusion. You stick with the whole avatar as the authority, or you use the interface of the whole, the we, the personal collective, valuing its perspective, you can say. It's like being a witness or being curious on its perspective rather than the ego self, rather than the fragment. Again, it's like the modernization of times. We don't go back to the typewriter anymore, right? We stick with the computer as of this time, when the computer is still the viable equipment. Right, but we don't keep going back to the typewriter anymore because it no longer serves. It's no longer viable. It's no longer effective, efficient, usable, applicable, right? So if you see the ego engine that way, that it belongs to the past, it might have worked before, but it's no longer viable now after being in the awakeness trajectory. Again, it's like a balloon that already has a lot of tears, a lot of holes. It just takes too much effort to just, pump it back up. It's kind of like it's no longer worth your time, right? And so you just use that which is actually applicable, that which actually works. And so you stand by the whole, you stand by what works. It's kind of like we stick with computer, even though someone offered us a typewriter. We're not going to entertain the typewriter, right? Even though someone is offering us to use that, we'll stand by the computer as of this time, right? So you can start, right, using this newer engine, or this more effective engine, you can say, when you encounter, let's say, discomfort, or maybe you heard about a really bad thing or really evil things happening on this planet. You can notice that the ego mind goes into knee-jerk reactivity, right? Goes into anger or goes into resistance, and yeah, all that. And now sit back and listen to the whole. Let the whole handle it. Let the body handle it. Find out how the avatar handles it, you can say. And you'll notice the difference. The avatar doesn't go into knee-jerk reactivity, doesn't go into knee-jerk resistance. So again, it's like being curious, being like this curious, open, childlike witness thing, childlike witnessing or audience, How will it handle this? Or how will it respond to this? I'm curious, how will this avatar, again, handle this or respond to this? And it's so much more, I don't know, you could say fun, enjoyable. It's a place of, you can say, the unknown, as a lot of spiritual teachings point to. Because again, you're in this place of listening, right? You're not the main character. You're finding out, oh, how will this avatar respond? What will it do? What does it like to do now? So you don't know. You're in a curious place. You're just a follower, quote unquote. And this avatar is the main character. And you're letting it be. You're letting it handle itself. It operates itself. It doesn't need an authority. It doesn't need the ego mind lording over it, telling it, you should do this, you should do that. You can say it's self-sufficient. It's complete, it's like a full package. It doesn't need the dictator in the mind. It knows itself better.